The world's best revenge is living well. This story will be about a guy who builds his life better after he gets betrayed by his fiancée. So listen up. It all began with a bang. We've just launched our dream project, the whole year's work and preparation culminating in one awesome event. We were the talk of the town. People talked about us everywhere. Media interviews, social events. Sarah, my fiancée, was basking in the glory. She had a lot of friends and acquaintances calling her, congratulating her. I was so happy for her. This is what years of work had led to. But it was during one such calls where I heard what shattered me forever. She told the caller that she had done most of the work for this project. I was in the corner of the room pretending to fix my tie while tears blurred my eyes. "What do you mean? You've been to only one meeting throughout this entire process." Me, angry, confused. I went to Sarah to question her, but she just brushed it off. "Don't be silly. Of course I helped. I am your fiancé. It's natural." But something inside me snapped. I knew her too well. Her ego and pride wouldn't let her admit that she was being used, yet I couldn't prove it. I chose to ignore it. Over the next few months, our lives became increasingly separate. She started staying out late, partying, leaving me to deal with clients and projects on my own. I tried talking to her, but she just gave me that condescending look and said, "You know I have to socialize. This is a people's business. You're just good at the designs part." I swallowed the bitter pill, hoping things would change, but they only got worse. Then came the final blow. She packed her bags and moved out. The only reason she gave me was that she needed her own space. I was devastated, but it was also the wake-up call I desperately needed. As I sifted through her things, preparing to move out myself, I found a letter. It was addressed to me, her neat handwriting taunting me from the front. With trembling hands, I opened it and read her words. "I can't keep doing this charade anymore. You know I'm better than this. I've been holding us back. Don't try to find me. This is goodbye." My worst fears were confirmed. She was ashamed of me. She didn't love me. She was using me. In the following days, the reality of my situation smacked me hard. I was going through a messy divorce from the woman I loved. I had given the best years to our relationship, pouring my heart and soul into it. And for what? My friends tried to help. They invited me over for dinner, dragged me to parties. But as the nights wore on, I found myself growing lonelier. The familiar sting of loneliness returned. I started having trouble sleeping, eating less and dreading each new day. I couldn't concentrate on work. Clients suffered. Projects fell apart. My boss wasn't pleased. The more Sarah rejected me, the more insecure I became. Then a thought hit me. Why should she decide my happiness? Why should I let her rejection define me? That's when I decided to leave my job and start my own venture. I threw myself into work, spending long nights designing and planning. I ate at my desk and slept in my office chair. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I didn't sleep well. Still, I wasn't going to ask for help. Slowly, a flicker of hope started burning inside me. If I worked hard enough, maybe I could convince myself that I was okay without Sarah. But everyone said I was foolish. My family and friends warned me that I was deluding myself, but I pushed on. One day, everything changed. I received an email. A big company wanted me to design their website. They liked my previous works and wanted something similar for theirs. I spent weeks working on it, giving it my all. When I presented it to them, they loved it. The deal was struck. It was my biggest project yet. Finally, I could prove myself that I could do it on my own. As I stepped out of my office that day, the sun felt warmer, the sky bluer. For the first time in months, I laughed. I called my friend to celebrate. Over drinks, I told him about my big win, about how things were finally looking up for me. He listened patiently, but when I hung up, I noticed a strange look on his face. "What?" I asked. "You know Sarah, right?" He nodded. "She's married now, right?" he asked cautiously. I frowned. No, why would she be married? My friend hesitated, then said gently, Sarah has been married for 6 months now. She told me herself. My blood ran cold. Had Sarah been lying to me all along? Was she with someone else all those nights she stayed out late? How could I have been so blind? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She never loved me. She had only pretended to. I felt like a fool. All those years, all that effort, all those memories. Suddenly they turned sour. The joy from my new project vanished, replaced by anger. It was pure, unadulterated rage. But as the initial shock subsided, a new feeling arose within me. Vengeful thoughts. At first they were just fleeting ideas, dark and dangerous thoughts of hurting Sarah, of destroying her, of making her suffer like I had. I pushed them away. I didn't want to become the person she had manipulated me into thinking I was. I wanted to show her that I had become better than her, that I could still be good. When we first met, she had been drawn to my creativity, to my passion for life. And that's what I would use to defeat her. I started with her favorite haunt, the places we used to frequent, transforming them into canvases of my art. Murals adorned walls, sculptures occupied street corners. I breathed new life into the city, into its people, and watched as Sarah's influence slowly faded from the community we had once built together. She hated seeing me succeed in places that she herself had helped establish. I could feel her presence in the wind, the way she stood in the doorway of our favorite bookstore, the echo of her laughter in the cafe where we had our first date. Everywhere I went, I could see remnants of her, of us, and it drove her mad. And finally, the day came when I confronted her. We met at the place where we had our last date, a quaint little restaurant nestled in a quiet corner of the city. She looked different, more beautiful than I remembered, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. She didn't recognize me at first, not really. When I spoke, my voice had changed, hardened by the pain she had inflicted. I told her about how she had affected me, about how she had manipulated me. I didn't scream, didn't shout, didn't cry. I just spoke. And as I did, the realization dawned on her. She understood that she had made a mistake. She tried to apologize, but I cut her off. There was no point in apologizing now. I didn't want her pity. I didn't need her apologies. When I finally left the restaurant, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. As I walked away from her, I knew that I had won. I had taken back control of my life. I had become stronger, smarter, kinder. And as I turned to leave, I saw the tears in her eyes. It was the sweetest revenge. Forgiveness is a virtue I aspire to, but forgiveness does not equate to forgetting. Justice may be blind, but memory is not. Betrayal is like a splinter in the mind, always there, always irritating. The question is, what do you do with it? Do you let it fester, causing redness and swelling? Or do you take it out, risking pain but ensuring healing? Some succumb to the bitterness, choosing endless irritation over momentary discomfort. But I am not one of those people. I may be slow to anger, but my wrath, when unleashed, is formidable. When the dust settled, I was left holding the pieces of what used to be. Our company, our clients, and worst of all, my shattered trust in Sarah. But instead of succumbing to despair, I channeled my feelings into action. What she had done was monstrous, but I wouldn't stoop to her level. The question wasn't about inflicting pain as much as it was about proving myself. I had to prove to the world, to Sarah, and most importantly, to myself, that I could stand on my own. So I started sketching again. This time it wasn't for her, it was for me. I poured every ounce of energy, every memory, every tear into my designs. Each stroke was a testament to my resilience. It was also a silent scream, a desperate attempt to be heard in a world where Sarah seemed to have drowned out my voice. As months passed, my creations began to attract attention. Local businesses started approaching me, drawn to my unique style. They loved the blend of classic elegance with modern innovation, a blend that was quintessentially me. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my life. It wasn't easy. There were days filled with self-doubt, moments when the weight of starting over threatened to crush me. But then I would close my eyes, imagine Sarah's triumphant smirk, and it fueled my determination. Then came the exhibition. A local art gallery owner, impressed by word of mouth, offered to showcase my work. It was a modest beginning, but it represented more than that to me. It was a public declaration. "Look, I am here," I seemed to shout to the world. "I may have been hurt, betrayed, even humiliated, but I am rising." And indeed I did. As the exhibition date approached, so did curious onlookers. Some were regulars in the art scene. Others had simply heard of the new talent in town. But all of them came with one thing in mind: to see the man who had dared to go against Sarah. The opening night was a blur. I remember greeting people, talking about techniques, and answering questions. But my focus remained fixed on one spot, the one where my work stood proudly displayed. Among them was a familiar face, Sarah. She stood by the entrance, her eyes scanning the room. I caught her gaze for a moment. Time seemed to freeze. All the unspoken words, all the suppressed emotions hung in the air between us. Then she looked away, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Perhaps surprise, perhaps regret, or maybe it was just relief that the spectacle was over. I couldn't tell. But whatever it was, it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She moved through the crowd, talking to people, laughing, and for a moment I feared she would approach me, demand an explanation, or worse, apologize. But she didn't. Instead, she circled my work like a predator eyeing its prey, her lips pursed, her eyes narrowed. Finally, she stopped in front of a piece that held special significance for me, a design I had worked on for weeks, pouring every bit of emotion into it. She stood there for what felt like hours, lost in contemplation. I watched her, hoping she would understand, hoping she would see the countless nights I had spent perfecting my craft, hoping she would recognize the genius she had tried so hard to erase. But she didn't. Instead, she turned to the gallery owner, a smug smile playing on her lips. "Tell me," she asked sweetly, "who designed this?" The owner hesitated, taken aback by the sudden question. "It's him," he replied, gesturing towards me. "He designed it all. That's his work." Sarah's smile widened. "Oh, really?" she said, turning back to face me. "Well, this certainly looks familiar. Almost like something I would have designed myself." The owner, sensing the tension, quickly excused himself, leaving me alone with my thoughts. In that moment, I knew Sarah wasn't here to appreciate my art. No, she was here to mock it, to belittle it, to destroy it. She had stolen my work in the past, and now she was doing it again, right in front of everyone. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising anger within me. This was my moment, my chance to showcase my talent to the world. I wasn't going to let her ruin it. With a newfound determination, I stepped forward and said, "You think this is yours? This is mine. Every line, every curve, every color, it's all mine. Unlike you, I don't claim what isn't mine. I don't betray. I don't steal. I create." My words echoed through the gallery, silencing the murmurs and curious glances. Sarah's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. But before she could respond, a voice boomed from the doorway. "That's quite the statement. Care to elaborate?" It was him, the one person whose presence could turn any gathering into a spectacle. Victor Sinclair, CEO of Solaris Enterprises and the art enthusiast who had catapulted Sarah to fame. He stood there, his eyes twinkling with amusement, a half-smile playing on his lips. To those who didn't know him well, he might have seemed like a harmless connoisseur. But those who did know him knew better. His presence was a storm, unpredictable and potentially devastating. In that charged atmosphere, I found my voice. I spoke of my journey, the challenges I had overcome, the sleepless nights, the constant self-doubt, and the unwavering pursuit of excellence. I didn't hold back. I didn't sugarcoat anything. And as I spoke, I saw a shift in the room. People leaned closer, their faces etched with interest and admiration. By the end of it, a hush had fallen over the crowd. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for a response. Sarah's face, however, was ashen. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking an escape. She was trapped, ensnared by her own web of deceit. Mr. Sinclair cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Quite a tale," he said, his voice laced with intrigue. "And if what you say is true, then it seems we have a situation here." He turned to Sarah, his smile vanishing. "Sarah, care to comment?" Her voice was a shaky whisper. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," Mr. Sinclair countered, his voice dangerously quiet. "Why don't you enlighten us all? Tell us whose design this is." She looked around the room, desperation evident in her eyes. She was trapped. She couldn't escape the truth. Then, defeated, she lowered her gaze. "It's mine," she whispered. The admission hung in the air, heavy with implication. Mr. Sinclair's gaze returned to me. "So," he said, his tone grave, "it seems we have a case of plagiarism on our hands. How do you propose we resolve this?" He didn't need to elaborate. I knew exactly what he was offering me. Not just a platform, but an opportunity to expose Sarah's deceit to the entire art world. A slow smile spread across my face. It was the smile of vindication, the smile of one who had reclaimed their stolen glory. In that moment, I understood that vengeance wasn't just about inflicting pain. It was about exposing the truth. As they say, truth may be late, but it arrives. And arrive it did. In the ensuing days, the art world was abuzz with the news of Sarah's betrayal. The shock waves were strong, reverberating through galleries, studios, and auction houses. To some, it was scandalous gossip. To others, a stark reminder about the fragility of trust. But for me, it was a cathartic release. The whispers that once haunted me became the anthem of my redemption. And as for Sarah, she vanished, retreating into the shadows from which she had emerged. Some say she fled the city, starting anew somewhere far away. Others claim she stayed, haunting the art scene under a different name. But regardless of where she is or what she does, one thing remains constant: the masterpiece I created without her. It serves as a reminder that betrayal, while painful, can be a catalyst for resilience and ultimately triumph. The silence of her absence is louder than any apology she could have uttered. It echoes in every brushstroke, every color, every frame I create. And as long as I live, so will the legend of my comeback. The morning Sarah walked out of my life, I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. Our office, once buzzing with ideas and possibilities, felt like a hollow graveyard. The computers, the sketches pinned to the wall, the coffee mugs we used to share. All of it seemed tainted by betrayal. For days, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I sat in that empty office staring at her chair, replaying her words again and again in my mind. "Without me, you're nothing." At first, I believed her. She had taken everything: our clients, our money, my trust. Who was I without the company we built together? Who was I without Sarah? But then, something changed. On the fourth night, I sat at my desk long past midnight. I was staring at an old sketchbook from my college days. In it were drawings, rough logos, crazy ideas, even business names I had once dreamed of starting. One page caught my eye, a design I had made before I even met Sarah. It was simple, imperfect, but it was mine alone. And suddenly, I realized something. Sarah hadn't created my ideas. She hadn't built my dreams. She had stolen them, manipulated them, twisted them into weapons against me. But the spark, the creativity, the vision, that was mine. And no betrayal, no theft, no Sarah could take that away from me. That night I made a decision. I wouldn't beg for what she took. I wouldn't fight to get her back. Instead, I would rise from the ashes, and when I did, I would make sure Sarah regretted every single word she spoke to me. It wasn't easy. I was broke. Most of our clients had followed Sarah. My reputation was smeared. She made sure of that. Whispers went around that I was unstable, unreliable, a creative who couldn't handle the business side. But I didn't care. I started small. Freelance gigs, late nights, working from my one-bedroom apartment. I sold my car to buy better equipment. I skipped meals to save money for software licenses. Every design I made, every project I took felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something new. And slowly, people noticed. One client referred me to another, then another. My work began to spread, not because of Sarah's charm or manipulation, but because of quality, because of me. Within a year, I had built a new client base. Within 2, I had enough money to rent a new office, this time in my own name, with my own signature. No shared accounts, no shared dreams, just mine. And through it all, one thought fueled me. Sarah would see this, and she would burn with envy. It happened at a corporate event. I had been invited to present my work at a regional conference. I walked into the grand hall wearing the only suit I owned, nervous but proud. And there she was, Sarah, standing on the other side of the room, surrounded by a group of executives, laughing that same laugh I once thought was mine alone. For a moment, the air left my lungs. Memories came rushing back, the library dates, the late-night coffees, the whispered dreams. But then she turned. Her eyes met mine, and I saw it. Shock, fear, maybe even regret, because I wasn't the broken man she left behind. I was stronger, sharper, and standing tall. She walked over, her smile tight. "Well, well, look who's still alive." I smiled back, calm, steady. Alive and thriving. Her expression faltered for just a second, but I saw it, and that second was worth every sleepless night I had endured. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about screaming in someone's face. It wasn't about fighting in court or throwing accusations. Real revenge was colder, smarter, and so I waited. I knew Sarah too well. She was greedy. She loved control, power, money, and she was reckless enough to think she was untouchable. Sure enough, rumors started circulating. Her new company was flashy but unstable. She was taking shortcuts, making promises she couldn't keep. She stole designs from freelancers, underpaid staff, and signed contracts she couldn't deliver on. I didn't need to attack her. I just had to wait for the cracks to widen. One of my clients came to me with an interesting proposal. They wanted to expand and needed multiple agencies to pitch ideas. When I looked at the list of competitors, my heart skipped a beat. Sarah's company was on it. It was the opportunity I had been waiting for. Not just to win a client, but to stand face to face in a professional arena and prove once and for all who truly had the talent. I prepared for weeks. Every design, every presentation, polished to perfection. I poured my heart into it, not for the client, not even for the money, but for myself, for the boy who once sketched dreams in a notebook. On the day of the pitch, I walked into the boardroom. Sarah was already there, confident, radiant, her team around her. She looked at me and smirked, as if the outcome was already decided. But as I began my presentation, something shifted. The room grew silent. Every eye was on me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was commanding. When I finished, the applause was real, genuine. And when Sarah took her turn, I could see the cracks. Her presentation was shallow, rushed, unoriginal. The executives exchanged glances. They weren't impressed. I didn't just win that client, I won something far greater. The look on Sarah's face when she realized she had lost. After that pitch, the tide turned. Word spread that Sarah's company was unreliable. More clients pulled away. Lawsuits started piling up. Unpaid vendors, broken contracts, plagiarism claims. Meanwhile, my company flourished. I hired a small team, expanded our services, and built a reputation not just for creativity, but for integrity, the very thing Sarah could never offer. Her secret
And every
weapon.
success of mine
As
was
Sarah's
another stone on the weight
accelerated,
pressing down
her
on her.
actions became more desperate.
But I wasn't done.
First, it was
Not
unpaid
yet.
invoices,
Because
then
true
contract
revenge isn't
disputes,
just about rising.
and then one lawsuit
It's about
after
watching
another
the person who
piled up.
betrayed you crumble
Before
under
long,
the weight of their own
whispers
choices.
turned into shouts, and
Her
Sarah's
company
time,
was
once
coming.
lauded as innovative, was now labeled as a house of cards. But amidst the chaos, something intrigued me. There was a disconnect between the stories and the lawsuits and Sarah herself. She was too clever to let her company fall apart. Something was off. One evening, while going through some documents, I discovered an email with an attachment. It was a contract. Not any contract. It was the contract for our most significant client, the one that made us enough money to afford our fancy offices. But that wasn't important. What was important was the signature. It wasn't our signature. It was Sarah's. She had forged my signature to secure the deal, and I realized with a chill that this wasn't an isolated incident. All the contracts in the lawsuits had one thing in common. Each had my forged signature. My blood ran cold. This wasn't incompetence or greed. This was sabotage. Sarah had systematically destroyed my reputation, my legacy. She had set traps everywhere, knowing I would eventually walk into one of them. The question was, how could I stop her? How could I hit back without falling into her trap? The plan. I spent days reviewing every document, every contract, every conversation with former clients, and then I found it. There was a clause in our client contracts, a small print that stated that if either partner left the company, the contract would be terminated. So Sarah had planned for our divorce by destroying our biggest deals, but she hadn't counted on one thing. We didn't have a divorce. She had walked out, leaving me behind, taking clients, money, and my hope. I had played along, pretending to be devastated, while secretly planning my comeback. And now, it was time to use her weapon against her. I started reaching out to the companies we had lost. I called the executives, some of whom I had personally worked with. I explained Sarah's deception, showed them the forged signatures, and bit by bit, things started moving. First, one company asked for rescission of their contract, then another. Soon, Sarah was bombarded with cancellation notices, each one a nail in the coffin of her company. Suddenly, she was scrambling, trying to negotiate, begging for understanding. But she was too late. She had sown seeds of doubt, and now those seeds had grown into storms. The derailment. Seeing Sarah squirm was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to expose her deception to the entire industry. I drafted a detailed account of our partnership, the red flags, the betrayals, the sabotage. I was ready to blow the lid off, but then something unexpected happened. A friend sent me an article. It was a profile of Sarah's company, a seemingly innocuous piece until I read the source. It was written by a popular business reporter, the kind of guy who only covered major players. He had interviewed Sarah, and she had told him everything. Our arguments, the divorce, the betrayal. She had painted me as the villain, a bitter ex who was after her money. I froze. She had turned the tables. Now the industry would see me as an unstable ex, not her, as a vindictive liar. In a flash, I realized I had walked into her final trap, and it wasn't just me. My friends, my family, my colleagues, everyone who believed me would be tainted by association. If I published my story, I would drag others into the mud. What was I supposed to do? The last thing I wanted was to become like Sarah, obsessed, vindictive, unscrupulous. But then I remembered something I had once told myself. Revenge isn't about being moral. It's about survival. And if I was to survive this, I needed a new plan. The last stand. I locked myself in my office, poring over legal texts, looking for a way to clear my name. And then I found it. There was a provision in our partnership agreement. What if I brought Sarah back into the company? It was a long shot, but it was my best option. I had to bring Sarah back if I wanted to clear my name. If I was to save my reputation, I needed to pull her into the same mud she had dug for me. Only then could I tell my story. Reaching out to her was agonizing. Months of anger and betrayal surged up, but I took a deep breath and dialed the number. "Sarah, we need to talk." She picked up, her voice still holding that condescending lilt. "What do you want?" I wasted no time. "I want you to come back to the company." Silence. "I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. We need to dissolve the company legally. I need your signature on certain documents." "And why should I?" "Because I can prove you sabotaged the company. I have the emails, the records. I can show everyone what you did. You wouldn't dare. You don't have a case." "I do, but I can't go public yet. I need to protect myself, my company. But if you sign the papers, we can settle privately. It'll save us both time, money, heartache." I watched her come undone on the phone. The rage, the disbelief, the fear, and then finally, silence. 2 hours later, she stood in my office, defeat etched on her face. It was a strange feeling, seeing her so vulnerable. But there was work to do. She signed the documents, and the next day we announced the dissolution of our partnership. She got half of what was left, the office, the clients, the money. It was hers. And I walked away knowing I had bought time. The reckoning. It was a long process, months of negotiations, court battles, depositions. But when it was done, I was vindicated. Sarah's reputation was ruined. The whispers became shouts, the doubts turned into accusations. Even her own family distanced themselves from her, afraid of the scandal. In the end, she was left alone, stripped of everything she had ever held dear. Looking back, I don't think I could have handled it differently. I fought fire with fire, betrayal with deceit, and in the end, I survived. But I also learned something crucial about revenge. It doesn't bring closure. It doesn't heal wounds. It just makes you feel momentarily satisfied. The months that followed were surreal. I had lived so long under Sarah's shadow that freedom felt foreign. For years, my thoughts were filled with her voice, mocking, belittling, controlling. Now, it was gone. And in that silence, I started to hear something I hadn't in years. My own voice. I poured myself into my company, but this time it wasn't about chasing Sarah or proving her wrong. It was about creating something meaningful. We expanded slowly, carefully, with values at the core: respect, collaboration, integrity. My employees weren't just workers, they were partners. Every project wasn't just about profit, it was about impact. And clients noticed. They didn't just come for the designs anymore, they came for the honesty, for the authenticity, for the story behind the work. What Sarah had destroyed, I had rebuilt tenfold. But revenge isn't a perfect cure. There were nights I still woke up hearing her voice in my head. Nights when I questioned whether I had gone too far, or not far enough. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I passed by a newspaper stand. Sarah's face stared back at me from the front page. The headline read, "Once rising star declares bankruptcy. Former CEO disappears from public eye." For a moment, I felt a pang of something I didn't expect. Not triumph, not joy, but pity. She had spent her entire life building a mask, and when it shattered, there was nothing left underneath. A few weeks later, I received a letter. No return address, no signature. But I knew who it was from the moment I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. It wasn't an apology. Sarah wasn't capable of that, but it was an acknowledgement. "You were always better than me. I knew it. That's why I did what I did. Because I couldn't stand the thought of you succeeding where I failed." I sat there for a long time, reading the words over and over. It wasn't closure, but it was something. People often think revenge is about destruction, about tearing the other person down. But standing there, holding that letter, I realized something different. Revenge hadn't given me peace. Success had. Not because it punished her, but because it freed me. Sarah's downfall wasn't my victory. My victory was the fact that I could walk away from it all, with my head held high, my life rebuilt, my dignity intact. If I could go back and change the past, would I? Would I erase Sarah from my story? The truth is, no. Because without her betrayal, I never would have discovered my strength. Without her cruelty, I never would have found my resilience. Without her lies, I never would have learned the power of truth. She thought she had broken me, but in reality, she forged me. So if you're listening to this story, maybe with your own scars, your own betrayals, you need to hear this. Yes, people will try to steal from you. They will try to tear you down, humiliate you, make you doubt your worth. But their power ends the moment you decide to rise. Build anyway, create anyway, dream anyway. Because the sweetest revenge isn't watching them fall. It's standing tall when they thought you never would. I never saw Sarah again after that letter. She disappeared from the industry, from the spotlight, from the world that once applauded her. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if she ever realized that the very person she tried to destroy ended up writing the final chapter of her story. And maybe that's the ultimate revenge. Not anger, not hatred, but knowing that in the end, I won by living.